Some people walk into your life like a blessing. Others collapse at your feet looking like a warning. The night I met Damien Russo, I couldn't tell which one he was. The wind cut through downtown Manhattan hard enough to make my eyes water as I stepped out of the rehabilitation clinic a little after midnight. My shift had ended 40 minutes earlier, but one of our elderly patients had fallen behind on her therapy exercises, and I'd stayed late to help her finish. That was the story of my life lately. 26 years old, drowning in student loans, living alone in a fifth-floor walk-up apartment in Queens, and somehow always finding reasons to put other people first. The city looked different after midnight. The crowds disappeared. The endless noise softened. Even the skyscrapers seemed less intimidating beneath the glow of streetlights and scattered office windows. Rain had started falling about 20 minutes earlier. Not a thunderstorm. Just a cold spring drizzle that painted the sidewalks black and turned every passing headlight into a streak of gold across the pavement. I pulled my coat tighter around myself and started toward the subway station 3 blocks away. My sneakers splashed through shallow puddles. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Rachel. "Did you finally leave work?" I smiled despite my exhaustion. "Almost. Walking to the train now. Don't get kidnapped." I rolled my eyes and slipped the phone back into my pocket. If only she knew. The streets were mostly empty. A couple walking their dog. A delivery truck unloading crates outside a restaurant. A homeless man sleeping beneath an awning. Normal city things. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should have changed my life forever. Then I saw him. At first, he looked like just another shadow near the edge of the sidewalk. Someone sitting against the brick wall beside a closed tailor shop. I almost kept walking. Almost. But something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way his head hung forward. Maybe it was how completely still he was despite the rain soaking through his clothes. Or maybe it was simply that tiny voice inside me that never let me ignore someone who might need help. I slowed. My heartbeat picked up. The smart thing would have been to keep moving. New Yorkers learned that lesson early. Don't get involved. Don't stop. Don't invite trouble. But my feet carried me closer anyway. The man looked to be in his mid-30s. Dark hair. Expensive black coat. Broad shoulders. Even sitting on the wet concrete, he carried a strange presence. Like someone who wasn't used to losing control of a situation. Water dripped from his hair onto his face. His eyes were closed. For one terrifying second I thought he might not be breathing. "Hey," I called softly. No response. I crouched beside him. "Sir." Still nothing. My stomach tightened. I reached out carefully and touched his shoulder. The reaction was immediate. His hand shot out and caught my wrist. I gasped. His eyes opened. Green. Sharp. Alert despite obvious exhaustion. The kind of eyes that seemed trained to notice everything. For a moment neither of us spoke. Rain tapped softly against the sidewalk around us. His grip loosened almost instantly, but the intensity of his stare remained. "You're alive," I blurted out before I could stop myself. One corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. That's usually how this works. His voice was rough, deep, tired. Relief washed through me so fast it almost made me laugh. "You scared me." He studied me for a second longer. Then his gaze drifted toward the empty street behind me as if checking for something. Or someone. The movement looked automatic. Instinctive. "You should go home," he said quietly. "I'm fine." I glanced at the rain-soaked sidewalk, then back at him. "You don't look fine." Another silence. Longer this time. The city seemed to hold its breath around us. Finally he looked back at me. Something flickered behind those green eyes. Not fear exactly. Not weakness. Just exhaustion so deep it made my chest ache. "Most people would have kept walking," he said. I shrugged. Most people aren't physical therapists. For the first time a real smile appeared. Small. Brief. Gone almost immediately. But it changed his entire face. And somehow, standing there beneath the rain and streetlights, I had the strange feeling that this man wasn't used to kindness. I didn't know his name. I didn't know why he was alone. I didn't know that powerful people across the city were searching for him at that exact moment. All I knew was that something in his expression made it impossible to leave. And looking back now, that was the exact moment everything began. For a few seconds neither of us moved. Rain continued to fall around us, soft and steady, turning the city into a blur of silver reflections and distant headlights. I should have left. Every practical thought in my head told me to walk away, catch my train, and forget I had ever stopped. Instead, I stayed crouched beside him on the wet sidewalk. "Can you stand?" I asked. His jaw tightened slightly. "Yes." The answer came too quickly, too automatically, like someone who hated admitting weakness. I folded my arms and looked at him. That was not a convincing answer. Another faint smile appeared. It vanished almost immediately. He placed one hand against the brick wall beside him and slowly pushed himself upright. For a moment he looked steady. Then I noticed the slight shift in his posture. The way he paused. The way he exhaled through clenched teeth before straightening completely. "You are not fine," I said. "You keep saying that." "Because it is true." He looked down the empty street again. Not nervous. Alert. Watching. Like a man waiting for something. Or avoiding it. I followed his gaze but saw nothing except rain and traffic lights changing colors at an empty intersection. "Do you have someone I can call?" I asked. "No family. No friends." No, his answers were short. Final. Yet something told me they were not entirely honest. Nobody carried themselves the way he did without having people somewhere in their life. "Well," I said, standing up and pulling my coat tighter against the cold, "you are definitely not staying out here." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" "Because it is 48 degrees, it is raining, and you look like you have not slept in days." That sounds like a personal opinion. It is a professional opinion. For the first time I heard a quiet laugh. Deep. Unexpected. The sound caught me off guard. Somehow it made him seem less intimidating. More human. A passing taxi sprayed water across the curb as it rolled through the intersection. I glanced toward the subway entrance a block away. Then back at him. "My apartment is 10 minutes from here." His expression changed instantly. The walls came back up. No. Absolutely not. You would rather sit in the rain? Yes. That is ridiculous. It is safer. The word stopped me. Safer. Not more comfortable. Not more convenient. Safer. A strange chill crawled up my spine. Safer for who? I asked quietly. He held my gaze for several seconds without answering. Then he looked away. "You should go home, Emily." My stomach dropped. "I never told you my name." The silence that followed felt heavier than the rain. He seemed to realize his mistake immediately. One hand rubbed the back of his neck. "Your clinic badge," he said. "You forgot to take it off." I looked down. The plastic identification card still hung from my coat pocket. Emily Carter, rehabilitation specialist. I felt ridiculous for being startled. "Right." He nodded once. But something about the explanation still felt incomplete. Before I could question it further, a gust of cold wind swept through the street. He swayed slightly, just for a second, barely noticeable. But I saw it. "That is it," I said. "Argument over." "Emily." "No," I pointed toward the corner. "My apartment. 10 minutes. You can sit down, drink coffee, and figure out whatever mysterious situation you have going on." His expression remained unreadable. "You should not trust strangers." "Probably not." "Then why are you doing this?" The question sounded genuine, as if he truly did not understand. I thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. Because if I was sitting alone in the rain, I would hope somebody stopped. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Regret. Maybe both. For the first time since I had met him, he looked away first. Then he exhaled slowly and nodded. 10 minutes, he said quietly. 10 minutes, I agreed. Neither of us knew that one decision was about to change everything. The walk to Queens felt longer than 10 minutes. Maybe because neither of us spoke much. The rain had eased into a mist that hung in the air like smoke, softening the glow of streetlights and turning every storefront window into a reflection of moving shadows. Damien kept a steady pace beside me, but I noticed everything. The way his eyes scanned every intersection before we crossed. The way he seemed to notice every passing car, every pedestrian, every sound. It was not nervousness. It was awareness. The kind that came from habit. The kind that never really turned off. By the time we reached my apartment building, my curiosity was working overtime. "This is me," I said, stopping beneath the old brick awning. Damien looked up at the 5-story building. "You live here. Do not sound so surprised." "I am not surprised." His eyes moved to the broken exterior light above the entrance. "I am questioning the landlord's commitment to maintenance." I laughed despite myself. "Welcome to New York." The tiny smile that followed looked almost natural. Almost. Inside, the stairwell smelled faintly of old paint and someone's late-night cooking. The elevator had been broken for 3 months, which meant 5 flights of stairs. Halfway up, I noticed Damien slowing slightly. Not enough for most people to see. Enough for me. "You can stop pretending now," I said. "Pretending what?" "That climbing 5 flights of stairs after standing in the rain is completely normal." "It is completely normal." "You are a terrible liar." His expression remained perfectly calm. "That is your opinion. Professional opinion." He shook his head. "You really enjoy saying that." "Because I am usually right." By the time we reached my apartment door, even he seemed relieved. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The familiar warmth wrapped around me immediately. Small living room. Tiny kitchen. Books stacked everywhere. A worn gray couch that had survived 3 apartments and 1 disastrous attempt at moving it myself. Nothing impressive. Nothing luxurious. Just home. Damien stopped near the entrance. His gaze moved across the room quietly, taking everything in. "You can sit," I said. "I promise the furniture is not dangerous." "That remains to be seen." I rolled my eyes and disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, I returned carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Damien sat exactly where I had left him. Hands folded, posture straight despite obvious exhaustion. It was as if he could fall asleep at any second but refused to allow himself the luxury. I handed him a mug. "Thank you." The words sounded sincere. Unexpectedly sincere. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The heater rattled somewhere inside the wall. The city hummed quietly outside. Then something caught my eye. A television mounted above the corner bookshelf had automatically switched on with the morning news replay. I barely noticed it at first, until a photograph appeared on the screen. A man in a tailored black suit exiting a luxury hotel. Dark hair. Green eyes. The mug nearly slipped from my hands. My heart stopped. Slowly I turned toward Damien. Toward the man sitting on my couch. Toward the exact same face staring back from the television screen. The news anchor continued speaking, but I barely heard the words. All I could focus on was the realization crashing into me. The stranger I had brought home was not some unlucky man caught in the rain. He was someone important. Someone powerful. And judging by the expression that crossed his face when he saw the television, he had been hoping I would not find out so soon. The room suddenly felt smaller. The soft hum of the heater disappeared beneath the sound of my own heartbeat. On the television, the anchor continued talking about business acquisitions, charitable foundations, and one of the most influential private investors in New York. The image on the screen remained unchanged. Damien Rousseau. The man sitting on my couch. The stranger I had found in the rain. Slowly, I looked from the television back to him. "You could have mentioned that." His eyes stayed on the screen for another second before he reached for the remote and muted it. The silence that followed felt strangely intimate. "Would it have changed anything?" he asked. "Yes." The answer came faster than I expected. "Maybe." He nodded slightly. "Exactly." I hated that response because part of me knew he was right. If I had recognized him on the sidewalk, I probably would have assumed he had security, assistants, drivers, or an entire team waiting to help him. I might have walked away. The realization unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Damien leaned back against the couch. For the first time since I had met him, the exhaustion in his face became impossible to ignore. The public version of him on television looked polished and untouchable. The man sitting in my apartment looked human. Tired. Quiet. Real. "So what exactly are you?" I asked. "That is a dangerous question." "Why?" "Because people usually hear what they want to hear." I folded my arms. "Try me." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Businessman." I laughed. That is not an answer. It is technically an answer. It is the kind of answer people give when they do not want to answer. For a moment, his expression softened, almost amused. Then his gaze drifted toward the rain streaking down the window. I manage companies, he said. Investments, real estate, logistics, and somehow end up sitting on sidewalks in the middle of the night? His jaw tightened slightly. Not anger, more like regret. Sometimes life becomes complicated. I studied him carefully. Every instinct told me there was far more to the story. But another part of me sensed that pushing would not help. Damien seemed like the kind of man who revealed things only when he chose to. The television remained muted behind us. Headlines continued scrolling across the bottom of the screen. His name appeared more than once. Wealth, influence, philanthropy, success. Yet none of it explained why he had looked so alone in the rain. My phone buzzed suddenly. Rachel. I glanced at the screen and groaned. What? Damien asked. My best friend. The one who warned you not to get kidnapped? I stared at him. You remember that? You read it out loud. I laughed despite myself. Fair point. Before I could answer the text, headlights flashed briefly through the living room window. A black SUV rolled slowly past the building. Then another. Then a third. Something changed in Damien instantly. His entire posture sharpened. Alert. Focused. The relaxed expression disappeared as if it had never existed. He stood and crossed to the window. The movement was calm, controlled, but the tension beneath it was unmistakable. I watched him carefully. Friends of yours? I asked. Damien did not answer right away. His eyes followed the vehicles as they disappeared around the corner. Then he exhaled slowly. No, he said quietly. But they might be looking for me. The words settled over the room like a sudden drop in temperature. I stared at him from across the living room, trying to decide whether he was serious. Looking for you? I repeated. Damien stepped away from the window and pulled the curtain closed. The movement was calm, but I could feel the tension beneath it. It is probably nothing, he said. You do not sound convinced. I rarely sound convinced. I folded my arms. That is not reassuring. For a moment he looked almost apologetic. Then he glanced toward the front door as if calculating something I could not see. The silence stretched between us. Outside, the city continued moving. Cars passed. Rain tapped against the glass. Somewhere in another apartment, somebody laughed at a television show. Normal life continued while my own seemed to be drifting into something increasingly strange. My phone buzzed again. Rachel. 3 messages this time. Are you alive? Did you fall asleep on the train? Emily? I looked down and smiled despite everything. You should answer her, Damien said. She worries. I raised an eyebrow. Now you are giving friendship advice? I am observant. You are nosy. A faint smile appeared. That too. I typed a quick response and slipped the phone back into my pocket. When I looked up again, Damien seemed distracted. His attention kept drifting toward the windows, toward the door, toward sounds I could barely hear. You know, I said carefully. Most people would probably call the police if mysterious SUVs started circling their building. His gaze met mine. Would you? I thought about it. Surprisingly, the answer was no. Not because I trusted him completely. I did not. But because every instinct I had developed working with people told me something important. Damien was worried. Not for himself. For me. The realization caught me off guard. No, I admitted. Probably not. Something softened in his expression. Thank you. The sincerity in those 2 words felt heavier than it should have. Before I could respond, his phone suddenly vibrated. The sound seemed unusually loud in the quiet apartment. Damien pulled the device from his pocket. The screen illuminated his face. Whatever he saw there caused every trace of calm to disappear. He stared at the message for several seconds. Then another arrived. Then another. I could practically see his mind working, calculating, adjusting, planning. Bad news? I asked. He slipped the phone away. Not exactly. That sounds like bad news. It means people have noticed I am missing. I blinked. Missing? He nodded once. My staff. Business partners. Security. Security. The word hung in the air. Of course someone like Damien had security. The idea that an entire team had probably been searching for him all night suddenly made perfect sense. They are worried about you? I asked. Unfortunately. Despite the situation, I laughed. You make it sound inconvenient. Concern usually is. The corner of my mouth lifted. Then something occurred to me. Wait. Damien looked up. You have security teams searching all over New York, and somehow nobody thought to check my apartment? This time he actually smiled. A real smile. Emily. What? Nobody knew you existed. The answer should not have sent a strange flutter through my chest. But it did. Out of millions of people in New York, I had somehow become the one variable nobody expected. The one place nobody thought to look. Outside, another vehicle passed beneath the window. Inside, the room felt quieter than ever. And for the first time since finding him on that sidewalk, I had the unmistakable feeling that whatever brought Damien Russo into my life was only beginning. The next hour passed in a strange kind of calm. The rain finally stopped. The city outside began waking up. Somewhere below, a delivery truck backed into an alley. A dog barked. A subway train rumbled beneath the streets. Normal sounds. Normal life. Yet nothing about my morning felt normal anymore. Damien stood near the kitchen counter, speaking quietly into his phone. He had finally answered one of the dozens of messages waiting for him. I pretended not to listen, but it was impossible not to notice the change in his voice. It was still calm, still controlled, yet every word carried authority. People listened when he spoke. Instantly. When the call ended, he slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked toward me. My people know I am safe. I sat curled into the corner of the couch with my coffee mug. Congratulations. A faint smile appeared. Thank you. So now what? His gaze moved around the apartment. The books. The photographs. The half-dead plant near the window that I kept forgetting to water. Now, he said quietly, I leave your life and everything returns to normal. The answer should have relieved me. Instead, something unexpected settled in my chest. Disappointment. I immediately hated that feeling. I had known this man for less than 12 hours. Yet somehow his presence already felt familiar. Dangerous thought, Emily. Very dangerous thought. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Rachel. I answered immediately. Please tell me you are alive. Good morning to you too. You disappeared for 6 hours. I laughed. I fell asleep. Across the room, Damien lowered his head slightly, clearly trying not to smile. Rachel continued talking. Work schedules. Weekend plans. Complaints about New York rent prices. Ordinary conversation. The kind I suddenly appreciated more than ever. When the call ended, I noticed Damien watching me. What? I asked. Nothing. That is not true. His expression softened slightly. You have good people in your life. The comment surprised me. So do you. Something unreadable crossed his face. Then he looked away. That reaction told me everything. For all his wealth and influence, loneliness seemed to follow him everywhere. A sharp knock interrupted the silence. 3 quick taps against the apartment door. Both of us froze. The atmosphere changed instantly. Damien moved before I could even stand. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just fast. Alert. Focused. His attention locked onto the door. Another knock followed. My heartbeat quickened. Are you expecting someone? He asked. No, we exchanged a look. Then I crossed the room and glanced through the peephole. Relief washed through me immediately. It is Mrs. Henderson. Damien frowned. Your landlord. Unfortunately. I opened the door. Mrs. Henderson stood there holding a small cardboard box. Package for you, dear, she said. The delivery man left it downstairs. I thanked her and closed the door behind me. The box was simple. No return address. No shipping label beyond my name. Emily Carter. That was all. Confusion replaced relief. Did you order something? Damien asked. Not that I remember. I set the box on the coffee table and opened it carefully. Inside sat a single bouquet of white lilies. Fresh. Expensive. Beautiful. Nestled between the flowers was a small cream-colored card. My stomach tightened. I opened it. There was only one sentence written in elegant handwriting. "We know who helped him." The room became very quiet. Slowly, I looked up at Damien. The warmth that had filled the apartment all morning disappeared. Because for the first time, whatever had followed him into the rain had finally found me too. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The card remained in my hand. The elegant handwriting seemed almost harmless until I read the sentence again. "We know who helped him." My pulse hammered in my ears. Across the coffee table, Damien took the card carefully and studied it. His expression became unreadable. Not surprised. Not shocked. Just focused. That frightened me more than panic would have. "Emily," he said quietly, "I need you to listen to me." The seriousness in his voice made my stomach tighten. How worried should I be? He looked directly at me. "More than I wanted you to be." The answer landed like a stone. Outside the apartment window, the city continued moving as if nothing had changed. Somewhere a car horn sounded. A siren echoed in the distance. Normal sounds. Normal life. Yet my own life suddenly felt very far away. Damien picked up his phone and typed a short message. Less than 30 seconds later, it vibrated with a reply. Then another. Then 3 more. Whatever network surrounded him seemed to move at incredible speed. "What is happening?" I asked. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Someone found the connection between us faster than I expected." "Because I helped you?" He nodded. "Because you were kind to the wrong stranger." The words should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, they felt terrifyingly real. I sank onto the couch and rubbed my temples. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern had been student loan payments and an overflowing laundry basket. Now anonymous people were sending messages to my apartment. Damien watched me carefully. "I am sorry." The apology caught me off guard. "You did not ask for any of this." His voice was low. Genuine. For the first time, I saw something beneath the confidence and control. Guilt. Before I could answer, another knock sounded at the door. My entire body tensed. So did Damien's. This time his phone rang simultaneously. He answered immediately. "Yes." Silence. Then his expression shifted. Relief. Actual relief. "Understood." He ended the call and looked at me. "Who was it?" I asked. "People I trust." The words had barely left his mouth when several vehicles pulled up outside the building. I crossed to the window before he could stop me. Black SUVs lined the curb below. Men and women stepped out wearing dark coats and carrying themselves with quiet professionalism. Nobody looked threatening. They looked prepared. Organized. Loyal. One of them glanced up toward my building. Another spoke into an earpiece. "Those are your security people?" I asked. Damien joined me at the window. "Yes. You have a lot of them. They would say there are not enough." Despite everything, I laughed. The tension eased slightly. Only slightly. A few moments later, my phone buzzed. Rachel had sent another message. "Lunch tomorrow?" I stared at the screen longer than necessary. The simplicity of the text suddenly felt precious. Normal. Safe. Damien noticed. "You are thinking about your old life." I looked up. What if I want my old life back? For the first time all morning, he did not have an answer. The silence between us stretched. Honest. Heavy. Then he looked out at the waiting vehicles below and said something. That made my heart sink. "Emily, I do not think your old life knows you anymore." The rest of that day passed in a blur. By noon, I was sitting inside the back seat of one of Damien's SUVs watching Manhattan slide past the window. The city looked exactly the same. Crowded sidewalks. Yellow taxis. People carrying coffee cups and rushing toward meetings. Yet everything felt different. Maybe because for the first time I was seeing how many layers existed beneath ordinary life. Damien sat across from me, reviewing messages on a tablet while 2 members of his security team occupied the front seats. Nobody spoke much. The atmosphere was calm, professional, almost routine, which somehow made it stranger. "Do they always follow you everywhere?" I finally asked. One of the men in the front seat smiled without turning around. Damien glanced up from the tablet. "Usually there are more." I stared at him. That is not comforting. It is not supposed to be. The vehicle slowed as we entered a private underground garage beneath one of the tallest buildings I had ever seen. Glass, steel, marble. Everything about the place screamed wealth. I stepped out and tilted my head back toward the ceiling, disappearing several stories overhead. "You work here?" I asked. Sometimes. Damien looked almost amused. "I own the building." I stopped walking. "Of course you do." For the first time all day, I heard genuine laughter from several members of his team. Even Damien smiled. The sound broke some of the tension lingering between us. Inside, employees greeted him with quiet respect. Not fear. Respect. That surprised me. People smiled when they saw him. Secretaries. Executives. Reception staff. They looked relieved he had returned. One elderly janitor even shook his hand and asked if he was feeling better. Damien knew the man's name. Knew his wife's name too. I watched the interaction in silence. It did not match the image I had built in my head. The man from the television. The mysterious stranger in the rain. The powerful businessman surrounded by security. None of those versions fully explained the person standing in front of me. Hours later, after meetings and introductions I barely understood, I found myself alone in a quiet executive lounge overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed miles of skyline glowing beneath the afternoon sun. It should have felt impressive. Instead, I felt tired. Overwhelmed. My phone buzzed. "Rachel again. You vanished. Are you joining civilization again anytime soon?" I smiled sadly. I was typing a response when the television mounted on the wall suddenly switched to a breaking news report. The anchor spoke rapidly. A photograph appeared on screen. My breath caught. It was Damien. A recent picture taken outside this very building. The headline beneath it read, "Russo Industries executive absent for 24 hours, sparking speculation." Another image appeared. Then another. Reporters. Analysts. Endless theories. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew he had spent the night sitting on a rain-soaked sidewalk before ending up in my tiny apartment. The absurdity almost made me laugh. The door opened behind me. Damien entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look concerned," he said. I pointed toward the television. "Apparently half of New York was looking for you." His gaze moved to the screen. Then back to me. "Only half." I accepted the coffee and shook my head. "Your ego is unbelievable." I have been told that before. We stood beside the window in comfortable silence. Far below, the city stretched endlessly toward the horizon. For the first time since meeting him, I felt something unexpected. Safety. Not because of the building. Not because of the security. Because somehow, despite everything that had happened, I trusted the man beside me. Then Damien's phone rang. He answered immediately. The color drained from his face. Every trace of calm disappeared. When the call ended, he looked directly at me. "Emily," he said quietly, "we need to leave. Right now." The drive lasted less than 20 minutes, but it felt much longer. Nobody explained where we were going. Nobody needed to. The expressions around me told the story. Something had changed. Something serious. By the time we arrived, the sun was already setting behind the skyline, painting the glass towers in gold. An amber light. The vehicle rolled through a private gate and stopped in front of a quiet estate overlooking the Hudson River. It was beautiful. Peaceful. The kind of place people escape to when they wanted to leave the noise of New York behind. Yet the atmosphere inside the vehicle remained tense. Damien opened the door and turned toward me. "You will be safe here." I stepped out onto the stone driveway and looked around. Safe from what? For a moment he did not answer. Then he glanced toward the river. "From consequences that belong to me." The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Inside the house, everything felt warm. Large windows. Soft lighting. The scent of coffee and cedarwood drifting through the halls. Members of his security team moved quietly through the property, checking doors and speaking into radios. Professional. Focused. Yet nobody treated me like a burden. Nobody treated me like an outsider. Hours passed. Evening settled across the water outside. Eventually I found Damien standing alone on a balcony overlooking the river. The wind moved through his dark hair as he stared toward the distant lights of Manhattan. For the first time since I met him, He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I stepped beside him. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence felt comfortable. Familiar. Then Damien exhaled slowly. "The night you found me," he said quietly. "I had spent weeks believing every problem could be solved with money, influence, or control." I listened. And a faint smile appeared. Then a woman with wet sneakers and terrible coffee changed my mind. I laughed softly. "My coffee is not that bad. Emily." He looked at me. "It is terrible." The laughter faded, replaced by something deeper. Something honest. "You stopped when everyone else would have kept walking." His voice remained calm, but I could hear the emotion beneath it. "You did not know my name. You did not know what I owned. You did not know who was searching for me. You simply saw someone who needed help." I looked away toward the river. "That is what decent people do." "No," he shook his head gently. "That is what you do." The words settled between us. Simple. Uncomplicated. Real. For the first time I understood something important. The wealth. The buildings. The headlines. None of those things had saved him that night. None of them had given him peace. Kindness had. Human connection had. The city lights shimmered across the dark water below. Somewhere in the distance, a ferry moved slowly along the river. Life continued. Quiet. Steady. Damien rested his hands against the balcony railing and looked toward the horizon. "Power kept me alive," he said. "But you reminded me why life was worth living." My throat tightened unexpectedly. Neither of us needed to say anything else. Because standing there beneath the evening sky, I finally understood the truth. I thought I had saved a stranger on a rainy sidewalk. What I had really found was a man who had forgotten how to be human. And somehow, against all logic, we had rescued each other.